Hey, so we are meeting today. Today is the first meeting of our book club, and we are going to talk about Brené Brown. So it's great that I can talk to you, Agata.
Yes, thank you very much. Same to you.
So let me just share the little presentation that we have, because in our book club, people don't need to actually read the book. Uh, we can just discuss it. Let me just, share the sound. We can just discuss it. We discuss different aspects, different issues that are um, tackled in the book. And we also read fragments of the book. So this makes it easier. So yeah, people can join us even without reading the book. Now, I don't see you. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, I can see the
Oh,
presentation very
okay.
well.
Great, great, great. Okay, so yes, the book that we're going to talk about today is Daring Greatly by Brené Brown. And Brené Brown is an American psychologist, and I'm sure that a lot of you have seen her TED Talks. She's famous for talking about vulnerability, long word. And she kind of talks about the importance of communication, of empathy, and we can find all of it in this book. And Agatha, have you heard of this writer before? Do you know her from somewhere?
Yes, I have actually, and I think it's really worth reading and exploring the author in terms of how much she's got to say about, empowering your vulnerability and as it pertains very effectively to our profession of being a teacher.
Exactly. So in our book club, we always pick books that have something to do with our profession. So we always look at them through this angle. And so we felt that Daring Greatly is definitely a book that has a lot to offer. It's really rich when it comes to, having reflections on education, being a teacher and struggles also being a teacher. So these were the sort of the main ideas. This is the rationale why we decided to talk about the book. But we also wanted to introduce ourselves. So today, the hosts are Agata and myself. So Agata, would you like to say a few words about yourself?
Yes, so I'm a special education teacher and I've been working in my profession for 23 years. I am also an English language teacher, but I also teach in English using British curriculum and also Polish curriculum. At the moment, I'm working at the international school in Warsaw as the primary school methodologist and the special educational needs coordinator, where I cater for the needs of children with special educational needs, such as autism, ADHD, dyslexia, and so on. And also, I'm very much interested in, in diversity, in bringing, in empowering neurodiversity in both students, teachers, adults, parents. It is very important for me to ensure that every child at school has got the equal chance to learn, to develop skills based to her knowledge capacity and so on. And this is something that is of utmost importance for me in my everyday work.
Thank you. And oftentimes, myself and Nagata, and also other board members of our charity, we talk about various struggles, right, that teachers face, that experience. So also, you have this inside knowledge, let's say, of different struggles that teachers experience. Myself, I'm an experienced teacher, psychologist, and therapist. And I'm also the founder of the charity. Well, in Polish, it's called Kiedy cichnie dzwonek, but maybe it doesn't say much to an English speaker. So the whole concept here, like the name, let's say in English, would be the quiet after ringing. So we mean the school bell. that we are waiting for that moment when the bell stops ringing. So this is the concept of like, this is the name of the foundation. And it's all about the well-being of teachers. So we want to support teachers and also help them fight any form of discrimination and help them with any struggles that they have. So they can always join our support group, join our workshops, and contact us if they have any reflections when it comes to teachers' well-being. So today, yes. So today, the book that we're going to talk about, as we said, is Daring Greatly. So this is the book. It's not the newest one because I know that she's published a different book quite recently. So this is a book from 2012. And for the last 12 years, 12, 13 years, this book has been promoted a lot, and she's talked a lot about the concepts that she discusses in the book. And this is all based on her research, because as we said, she's an American psychologist, and she researches the concept of courage, vulnerability. I don't know what's today with me, like with the word, and communication. So these are the things and that she talks a lot about. So in English, this is Daring Greatly. And in Polish, so for our Polish audience, if anybody's interested, the title of the book is Z wielką odwagą. And you can also find this book as an ebook. We were also saying that you can find it as an audiobook, so it's accessible. Um, and well, the title of the book, Daring Greatly, it actually comes from Roosevelt's speech. So Brené Brown talks about this quote at the beginning of the book, just to explain what she means by this, what she means by the concept of daring greatly. So we wanted to sort of look at this quote and maybe see what reflections we have. Um, we as teachers, what we would say, how relevant it is to our profession and our world. So let me read it. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives uh, valiantly, who errs and comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error or shortcoming, but who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who, at the best, knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who, at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who knew neither victory nor defeat. What do you think?
Yeah, so I do agree with that quote, and I think I can find myself in that quote as well, working as a teacher, experiencing, different situations. Like I experience both defeat, victory every day with different things. I try my best to provide the most tailored support to all my students, to support teachers, to support myself in that role as well. But I think it's inevitable that everyone who works in education experiences different results. And I also think that it's good to experience errors, to make errors, because that's when you learn from them and you become greater next time. And let's say in terms of teaching a lesson, I did it, not very well today. I didn't like it. Maybe something didn't go well, but the next day I can improve it. So learning from, maybe I wouldn't say mistakes, but learning from your students, learning and finding out from your students what you can improve, so that your lesson or whatever you do when you deliver lecture, workshop, and so on, how you can learn from it, And I think it teaches you to be greater educational leader. And it just opens up a lot of different ideas. This quote for me, because um, it's very deep, I would say, like
Mm-hmm.
to me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And something that you mentioned, like, so getting that feedback from students, right? I think that's key. And this is also something that Brené Brown talks about in her book, the importance of feedback. But of course, it's also important that the intentions are positive, right? So somebody doesn't just criticize a person just for the sake of it, but rather it's always thinking. So if, for example, the school head provides feedback, gives feedback to the teachers, it's always the positive intentions, right? Thinking about the growth of the person, not to break them, right? And this is something that she really emphasizes. And unfortunately, I mean, the stories that sometimes teachers share with us, we can see that feedback is not used maybe in the right way, that sometimes people use it just to criticize another person, not to really support them. And of course, it does involve actually two parties, right? So both parties need to be open. So the person who receives the feedback also need to be open. They need to be open to like to receiving it, which is not easy. But at the same time, I think if the culture is that the feedback is there to help a person grow, to support them, support them, and so then they can thrive. Then I think people also wouldn't be scared of that criticism. Yes, and I feel like here it's definitely because we as teachers we are faced with some critics that are outside, sense that come not from our world of education. Sometimes people don't even realize what it takes really to be a teacher. And on a daily basis, we see those different comments online, on social media, and it really breaks your heart because as teachers, we put so much effort and heart into like what we do. And then you can see that people from outside also like don't understand really. And they talk oftentimes about a long holiday. Yes, but we know that during holiday we do a lot of other things and we actually work, so it's not like we have 2 months off. So I think that for me, when I looked at this quote for the first time, it really, yeah, as you said, it's very rich, but also I felt like it gave me a lot of positive energy because I felt like, well, for example, if somebody from outside this world approaches me, I'm open to some feedback, but at the same time, I do need to remember this person is not really fighting, right, in the arena. And I think that is also quite important to remember. I found some quotes,
Mhm.
rather reflections, let's say, people's reactions to this quote. And I must say that on this forum, this was like an online forum, there were a lot of people from the army. And
Oh.
right, they were saying, right, that so this is, for example, the first one, 32 years in Air Force, and he said, that he can appreciate what he's saying, so they can relate to it, right? So they were taking the concept of fight in the arena very literally. It's also quite interesting. And there's another one I've heard. It said there are two types of people, those on the playing field and those in the grandstands. The grandstanders hold themselves as experts, at the same time never having played the game. I think I will stay on the field. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think it's kind of funny that the quote we're discussing in terms of education is also very much liked by the former or the present Air Force staff, because it does actually resemble battlefield at times. I'd also like to refer to Ofsted inspection because we don't
Mm,
have that in Poland. We've got other inspections, but they're not as regular, I would say
yeah.
as severe as you guys have in the UK. I experienced one as I used to teach in England for 10 years at a lovely school in London. But in terms of offset inspection, what happens prior to that, during how much we stressed out and how much we panic, we could definitely certainly compare it, to Air Force battlefield because the amount of stress teachers are under, it's unbelievable, and the amount of responsibilities we hold as well as teachers, as educators, when they observe us, it's also very, very stressful. And a lot of people don't realize, um, you know, how much effort it takes from you not to take things to yourself after
Yeah.
you've been observed and so on. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that support that NQTs need, right? So newly qualified teachers, I mean, it's vital that they really experience a positive culture where there is support, when there is that positive feedback, but also not just from the school head, but also like from the colleagues. And I think that is important. They actually feel that they are part of this tribe, let's say, right? There's a community because without this, it can really break them. And actually, there's statistics that say that within the first, a lot of people experience burnout after like the first 4 years of working at school. I mean, I know cases of people who experience burnout even earlier than that. But yeah, that concept of support, I feel like definitely needed, and like that battlefield, like sometimes, yeah, it feels like some sort of battlefield. And then here, there's also a comment that people who, for example, doubt themselves sometimes, they also look at the quote as and some sort of some form of inspiration for them. So this was also quite interesting. And you were talking about Ofsted, and there's this quote talking about bureaucracy. So I feel like this is also quite relevant. But again, I'm ex-military, right? So Chris Moon, this is from 2023 comment. I'm ex-military and was blown up working for a charity clearing landmines in remote East Africa. Lost 2 limbs, survived against the odds, became of the world's first amputee runners. And when I got back to UK, I realized the concept of hindsight heroes, people who sit on the sidelines and comment on situations where they weren't present with no knowledge of the facts. They need to read this. Yeah, I mean, so
Wrong.
yeah. Yeah, again, the military world versus the world of teachers. Um, but here are some reflections. I mean, we kind of started talking about it. What personal quote it holds for us. So we kind of explained maybe what it means to us. And also, in what ways do we see ourselves in the arena as teachers? So we were talking about Ofsted, we're talking about being observed, right? Would you add anything to this concept of facing the dust and sweat and daily challenges?
Yes, maybe like misunderstanding, because school is the huge community and we have people of different personality and we have to tolerate each other, get on well with each other. We've got bad days, we've got good days, we've got family dramas. We are told not to bring in our worries into school and so on, but sometimes it's very, very difficult. Also, what else I could say? Any inspections, any observations. This also triggers a lot of stress. If you, for example, experience trauma and you're the survivor of a traumatized experience, then what may happen? You may freeze during the observation. It may not go well. You may experience another drama, whatever you bring into school, what you experience, it always comes with you. So we need to be mindful of that. That this is a profession, we definitely have to separate this from that, but it requires a lot of practice. So as a newly qualified teacher or as someone who has not worked at this specific educational setting, this might be very, very difficult and it may require some support, you know.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
because this kind of support we talked about a lot. And for example, like in Poland, teachers don't really receive that support. Like we're talking about psychological support, right? They don't really receive this. And also, there's no mentorship. There's no program in place. And schools are trying to introduce some procedures and maybe schools that are more forward thinking, let's say. So the school heads maybe, try to support NQTs in a more mindful way. And so we are aware that these things maybe happen. So there are cases that maybe there is some support at some schools, but in general in Poland, that's not the case, right? So it's really sad. And that's why, I mean, you're talking about teachers who experience traumas, right? And how triggering certain things can be. So we feel that definitely school heads like need to know how to use NVC, how to use nonviolent communication, how to be proficient in it, so that the feedback is really positive. And yeah, and they really cultivate, right, that culture of positive feedback, of kindness, because we talk to students a lot about it. But students, are very, like, as we know, intelligent, and they can see as well. And at schools where kindness is, let's say, not really cultivated, then they don't really see the point of it. So I think we as teachers, we do need to really understand that we are examples, and what we preach, we need to actually show it to students, because otherwise it's just like these are empty words. I also wanted to ask you about maybe how to respond to criticism, because if there are any newly qualified teachers, for them it might be very difficult, right? And one thing is, of course, that the person who provides some feedback needs to know how to do it professionally. But we deal with a lot of criticism from different, right, from different agents. So what would you say? Like, how can we respond to criticism? Or how have you responded to criticism, maybe? Um,
I think it's important, first of all, that when you get a chance to speak to the person that, well, you should really, after you are observed, there should be a meeting when you discuss the lesson outcomes, the observation, and so on, and asking for examples of what didn't go well and try to talk this over. So for next time, you've got your feedback on the paper and uh, how you can improve your lesson. And it's not the criticism of you. It's I would say it's a suggestion, it's feedback for you to know what to work on so that this lesson is presented differently to the students, that the lesson objectives are fully met. So the criticism should be constructive, but also you should receive smart, measurable, achievable, realistic, time-bound goals to work on developing from that criticism, because you could say, oh, your lesson was very bad, or I didn't like your lesson. But this is not feedback. So in order to respond to criticism, this criticism must be constructive. And you
mhm,
need to keep asking questions uh, to get to the bottom of this as to why this lesson wasn't graded good
mhm,
or outstanding or only satisfactory, or if you are an outstanding teacher and your lesson was judged as good, then definitely, that would be something that you would want to know what you need to do to go from good to outstanding. But I think lesson observation shouldn't have criticism in mind. It should be cooperation. It should be support. It should definitely have in mind, when I observe a teacher, I don't come to observe, needs to improve. I'm coming to observe good points, and there
Mm-hmm.
might be one or two that we need to work on. And that
Mm-hmm.
this should be in your mind when you come and observe lessons delivered by teachers.
Mm-hmm. So this is feedback from a teacher to a teacher, let's say, right? So if you're from SLT, then you're providing feedback to teachers, but you're a teacher yourself. But what about people who are not teachers, right? Who are not from this arena, like for example, right? So they share their criticism, I don't know, on different fora, or like we're talking about social media, right? They share their opinions and they criticize teachers, sometimes just in general. Sometimes they might be parents of students, right? So, so we're talking about people who come from outside this arena. What would you say in terms of responding to criticism? Because that is hard, right? Because there's, from my perspective, the difficulty here is that there is no dialogue, because it's just like one-sided. It's just somebody just shares their opinion. And of course, everybody kind of has the right to share their opinion, well, to some extent, because the opinion can also be really mean, let's say, right? So
Yeah.
I think people need to be aware of it. They might be also hurting another person by saying certain things. But well, to some extent, okay, right, we've got freedom of speech, so people do say various things, and then so they criticize teachers, although they are not teachers themselves, so they don't really know the reality of like what it means to be a teacher, right? And the question is like, how do you respond to it? Because we do have a lot of teachers who come to us, and they, for example, say that they experience difficult situations, and actually the criticism came from people from outside, right? So what do you think? How could we maybe tackle this? How could we respond?
Well, when it comes to social media and discussions that I never participated in this, although I have a strong sense of justice, and it gets me when I read this, very wise comments from people who've never worked in education and believe that all we do is drink coffee and watch Netflix and have lots of holiday throughout the year, which is not true. I never engage in such discussions because they are meaningless and just drain energy. However, when I get approached by someone who, challenges this idea of education and criticizes and so on, I try to be as neutral as possible, although because it's very, it's a topic that evokes lots of emotions in me, I try not to become too engaged. But I learned not to respond to everyone because people don't want to know. They just dare. They just want to take it out on you. Unfortunately, nowadays, this is how society works. There's so much criticism of everything, really. And people have become so judgmental. Um, and so many other things that, happen in the world, politics, refugees, LGBT, and education, and so on. So there is conversation, there is criticism of everything, and I kind of think, it gets me to think that actually, people got used to some, blobbing and venting and taking it out on you because they feel better, so they don't have to
Mm,
think about themselves and their life, but they will just write something that's vicious. So,
mhm,
and it makes their day if you react to it. So I don't engage in these meaningless conversations. I don't have to prove who I am to them.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
stopped
mean,
doing that.
that,
Definitely. Yeah.
that's a very good point. I think that when it comes to face-to-face conversation, sometimes maybe it's harder. But I know what you mean. I think like also talking to some people who I don't know, visit our support groups and who talk to us, like I feel like sometimes it's definitely understanding and knowing that, well, we also experts, right? So and of course we might be wrong sometimes. Like I think like any expert can be wrong, and I think it's important to acknowledge this. But at the same time, sometimes I think we need to say it that we've spent years and years studying this, right? It's not like all of a sudden we became teachers. We spent years studying our field, right? And I think it's sometimes I feel like it's worth saying it that
Yeah,
we are an
for sure.
expert and we hear what the person is saying, but there is also, I don't know, there are studies also behind what we are saying, right? There is actual research that supports what we are saying. And I feel like this is quite helpful from my perspective. So whenever somebody kind of, let's say, mm, criticizes, but like in a negative way, right? So they don't really want to have a dialogue, but they just saying something for the sake of saying it. As you said, they're venting. I think it's good, like what you're saying, maybe it's not worth really engaging with it. But sometimes I know that sometimes when you need to say something. So I feel like facts research, right? Actual,
Yeah.
so looking at the sort of rational aspect and just saying what science, let's say, tells us about a particular issue, right?
Yeah. And Kate, if I may just interrupt, otherwise I'll
Yeah,
forget what I
yeah,
wanted to
sure, sure,
say.
sure, sure.
I just think you need to let them. And it just
Mm.
reminds me of that book, the
Yes,
green
yes, yes,
cover, Mel Robbins, Let Them.
yeah,
I
yeah,
even bought myself a t-shirt with with a statement, Let Them, and the
yeah.
heart in the middle, because you just let them say whatever they want. Let just let them, if this makes them feel great about themselves, that they know it, just let don't waste your energy that's already depleted, because if you're a teacher,
Mhm.
you have got very little energy at the end of the day when you come
Yeah.
home and have to think about what to cook for dinner, and because you made a million decisions throughout the day, then thinking about what to cook for dinner, what to prepare for tomorrow, you just there's no energy, there is no, in my brain there is no scope to think about that. So I don't really engage in this dramas anymore. I just let them think and say whatever they want. And so at this moment I would also like to recommend the book by Mel Robbins, Let Them. It's really great. It changes your perspective. It helps you, learn this different approach towards other people. You just stop really caring about this criticism, because you know what you do and you know your worth. So what's the point of worrying about what others think about you? You know?
It's very
Yeah.
wise. Thank you so much for mentioning it. Yes, yeah, I also agree that this book kind of really shows that sometimes the only response is maybe just letting people. But of
Yeah.
course, with like, and sometimes also she says that you need to maybe disengage, right? In a sense that if we're talking about, I don't know, your friends or your loved ones who behave this way, then you behave differently to, for example, to a situation where like you're dealing with total strangers, right? That's also a different thing. But yeah, letting people just like disengaging, and I think that is very wise. Okay, so what we're going to do, we are just going to show a fragment of a talk. So this is not the actual TED Talk, because the TED Talk, as we said, is a bit it's longer. So, but we encourage anyone who is watching us today, who is listening, to we encourage you to watch at least one of her TED Talks. You can find them on YouTube. But this is a video where she kind of explains a little bit the concepts that we've just discussed. So we're going to play it. I will just check first if you can hear it. So let's see.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great.
Yeah.
We think about vulnerability as a dark emotion. There are a lot of people who talk about positive emotions negative emotions, dark emotions, light emotions. We think of vulnerability as a dark emotion. We think of it as the core of fear and shame and grief and disappointment, uncertainty, things that we do not want to feel, right? Things that I don't want to be vulnerable because that means I'm afraid. That means I'm uncertain. That means I'm at risk. I'm exposed. I'm in grief. So what we do is we armor up and we say, I do not want to slip into these dark emotions. I will not let myself be vulnerable. But here's what I learned from the research and certainly put into motion in my own life that was the most life-changing, is that vulnerability is the center of difficult emotion. But it's also the birthplace of every positive emotion that we need in our lives. Love, belonging, joy, empathy. How many of you would agree that we're in a serious empathy deficit in our culture today? Totally, right? No vulnerability, no empathy. In a culture where people are afraid to be vulnerable, you can't have empathy. You know, empathy is not a default response. If you share something with me that's difficult, in order for me to be truly empathic, I have to step into what you're feeling. And that's vulnerable. So there can be no empathy without vulnerability. Why do you think, in that example that I used a while ago, daughter comes home and says, you know, tears, no one sat with me at lunch today. They made fun of what I was wearing. So-and-so won't talk to me. They poured my books out of my locker. And the response back is, I told you, I bought you all those cute jeans. Why aren't you wearing those jeans? And pull your hair back. Is that an empathic response? No, it's a shaming response. Could that shaming response be at the, could a mother who absolutely adores her child respond with that shaming response? Please say yes. Don't kid yourself. I mean, come on. If you're a parent sitting in here, then you sure as hell know the answer to that is yes. But why? Why did that happen? Where was the access to vulnerability? Where was empathy? You can't access empathy if you're not willing to be vulnerable. So if my daughter comes home and tells that to me, guess what I have to do? I have to reactivate that sweaty palmed 7th grader who lives inside me. And I have to go, oh God, that's so hard. I'm so sorry. That's happened to me. That's happened to me when I was in middle school, and it's happened to me last week. Let's talk about it. But you can't get there without vulnerability. You can't fake empathy. Innovation and creativity, born of vulnerability. This is my favorite part. I talked about this I did another TED Talk this year in Long Beach, and I told the story that during 2011 and even this year, after the big TEDx Houston talk went viral, the big calls came from Fortune 500 companies. Oh my God, we loved your TED Talk. It was great. Please come talk to all of our senior leaders. And it's like, okay, what do you want to talk about? Like, we don't care. Just come and talk to us. Just if you could ixnay the shame and vulnerability talk. Every single conversation, barring maybe 10%. I was like, well, what do you mean? Well, we love, you're funny. You have this great research. I think there's a real fit with what we do. We don't really do, that kind of stuff around here. So if you could not mention vulnerability and shame. So just for fun, for grins, I would say, okay, so what would you like me to talk about? Yeah, fourth quarter earnings, like freaking don't even balance my checkbook. I'm not going to talk about that. So what do you want me to talk about? Well, the big issue, creativity and innovation. And change. We're going through a lot of change. Okay, so vulnerability is the birthplace of creativity, innovation, change. And the reason that crisis is happening is because you're not talking about vulnerability. Imagine creativity and innovation without vulnerability. I'm asking you for a work product that has never been made before, that's completely innovative. I need you to be creative, and I need you to present it to a group of people who are going to, half of them are going to think it's stupid and not understand it. No vulnerability there.
Okay. Oh, I can't hear you.
You can't?
Okay,
Speaking.
now, yeah. Mhm.
Okay, all right, okay. Maybe I was speaking quietly and that you didn't hear me because, or maybe that my microphone was off. I don't know. Yeah, that's a great video with amazing message. Do not be afraid to be vulnerable, but don't take my kindness as my weakness.
Mhm.
That's also something that I've learned. Yeah.
Yeah, because oftentimes we do experience this form of leadership, right? That is, being tough means like you're a good leader and like and not really caring about people's emotions and that means you're a good leader. And like that doesn't work in any world because of course our world of education is quite specific, so of course like this doesn't work in education, but I worked in other industries. It also doesn't work in other industries because to be a good leader you really need to be empathic, right? So you need to understand the concept of empathy. You need to understand that somebody who's going through a hardship needs some support sometimes. So you need to talk to people about, like, you need to know your colleagues, basically. You need to know who you work with. You need to know what motivates them. And you need to also understand like what triggers them, right? So in order to avoid that, maybe in order to support them, to help them grow, not to break them. And in education, like yeah, like we definitely need to stress this, right? That this is so important, like the concept of empathy. And it's interesting what she was saying, right? That there's no innovation without being vulnerable. Like you need to touch that emotion. You need to be honest, authentic. Like you cannot build a relationship without it, but also you cannot really create something great without it. I mean,
Unfortunately, we live in the world where people who are empathetic, who are vulnerable, who are genuine, people take advantage of them, and they are also worried that they might be taken advantage of because of that, because that's their weakness. Empathy, vulnerability is not seen as a strength, it's seen as a weakness. Also in educational setting, not in every place, but in a lot of them, it works like that. However, what we need to bear in mind is that we need teachers, we need educators who are vulnerable and empathic towards the children, because these are the skills that we need to be teaching to kids nowadays. Social skills training, integration, understanding, kindness, and so on. We teach the kids.
yeah.
We need to set a good example. If it doesn't exist in our setting, if it's not in us, then we need to work on developing it. Unfortunately and sadly, if you are, true to yourself, genuine, empathic person, kind, and so on, a lot of people will take advantage of it because they will see that you haven't, set the boundaries that you can be taken advantage of, and you will say sorry, I will do whatever. But it's just misunderstanding because it's not that you don't have that you have the capacity to say no, but you can still be empathic, vulnerable.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
think this is also something that the author wanted to pass on to us in that
Mhm.
message on the video, because it happens every day, not just in teacher's profession,
Mhm.
everywhere, really.
Yeah, and because one thing is empathy, but she also mentions the concept of shame, right? Like she's talking about that interaction between a parent and a child, and she talks about shame in this book as well a lot. And so shame oftentimes is used as a tool. Yeah, she's saying that is used to intimidate people. So this is like this way of like how people lead, how they manage other people, and it's so wrong because it's just as she was saying, like people are not going to be productive, people are not going to be creative if shame is the main tool that's used by management. So I know what you're saying, right? That people do take advantage, but at the same time, I think so. Maybe what's key is showing what the boundaries are. So on one hand, being an empathetic person, but then also saying, where the boundaries are, which is super hard, especially if you do want to build those relationships, if you want to have a dialogue. But it's like with NVC, you have a dialogue with somebody who's open and wants to have a dialogue. But if somebody just creates a wall, how do you have a dialogue with that person? So sometimes, as you say, you have to let them.
Yeah.
And just really, but also understand that this is a situation where you are not going to get through to that person.
And it's not about you. It's not about you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And here we do have some points just to link it a little because we'll be finishing shortly.
Yes.
So today's session, we are starting really our conversation on this book, Daring Greatly. But we wanted to kind of maybe finish with some points from this talk and also based on some of the chapters from the book. So being authentic, right? Like she talks about this authenticity. And we constantly face situations, so we teachers, we mean, where we don't have all the answers, from tricky classroom management moments to adapting lessons on the fly. Embracing vulnerability means acknowledging uncertainty and showing students that it's okay to take risks and make mistakes. This models a growth mindset and encourages students to do the same. Well, this is very much in line with what we were saying, right?
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. So this is one of the things like that we cannot expect from students to be honest, authentic, and us not being authentic. But as you said before, sometimes, well, we need to also there's a filter. You cannot say everything what you think. Yes. So it is really like having that filter because yeah, like it's not like we teach kids how to be kind. So it's also as being kind. So being authentic, but also having that filter that there are those moments maybe like when you cannot say everything, but this concept also of growth mindset, right? So that we practice it. We understand that we want to grow as teachers. I think first we need to understand it before we start encouraging students to do it, right? Because if we don't understand the concept, how can we really preach it? So this is right. This is something key. Then another idea is building trust and connection. So this is something that we talked about. And I'm sure that you've seen a lot of like, again, TED Talks of like experts in education where they talk about that connection. And without that connection, it's impossible to teach. It's a child is not going to really respond to what you provide because they might dislike you, let's say, or they might don't, they might not feel that there's any connection. And of course, like everybody has the right to like, and I'm sure they have their favorite teachers, etc. But I'm talking about like even seeing that the teacher cares. So a student might not like a particular teacher, but at least if they see that the teacher cares, that they want to build a relationship with them and their classmates, then they will respond positively, right? So that concept of empathy, it's necessary in order to build trust. I mean, what do you think? Would you add anything to this?
Yeah, for sure. Teaching that to children that we are, we were our teachers had, but we are humans, inside this hut, and we were students, we were children, and we learned from mistakes, and basically admitting to making a mistake. This is something that, if we do that, and if we show it to the children, they learn from our example that we don't create ourselves as, the best teacher they ever had, because teacher equals never made a mistake. But no, teaching means that we as teachers, we also make mistakes. And if sometimes we should really make a deliberate mistake, just to show it to the students that, well, look, I made a mistake, just like you. So, and it doesn't mean, don't worry, that students will stop respecting you. Always like be, an official teacher. Don't allow the students to speak to you, calling you by your first name. But it would be nice that, to create that, that atmosphere of mutual respect. But please also remember that you are a student, you are a pupil, you are a child, and you've got those kids, students in front of you, and they want you to be authentic. They don't want you to pretend someone you're not, because the kids always feel that, when you're not being yourself.
Yeah.
So if you have a bad day, if you had an accident on your way to school and so on, then it's I remember a colleague of mine, she came to school wearing two different shoes. But she didn't actually realize it was like the ballerina shoes, but a different shape. And she showed it to the students, said, look, she used it as an advantage. Look, I forgot and I didn't look properly when I was putting the shoes on because I didn't have enough time to check it. I was rushing to school. So they were talking about better management. And that was amazing. It was hilarious, but also a great lesson for everyone.
Yeah,
Thank you.
because it's kind of right. It's saying, okay, let's discuss it. And I'm vulnerable, right? I also experience these things. I also make mistakes, but I'm honest about it. Because the worst thing is like when you pretend that nothing has happened, like
Yeah.
you don't want to discuss it, then right, like you cannot really build any relationship on that. So totally, like definitely, and also talking, as you said, about strategies. I think that
Yeah.
is really key, right? So when something happens, like we were talking about being ADHD before, right? In one of our podcast episodes, and like discussing that with students and saying that, we did also struggle at school and how we faced certain challenges, what we did. All right. And so this is one thing when it comes to our interaction with students, but also I think like with colleagues. I think like it's so important to like be honest. I mean, I'm talking about that aspect of being vulnerable, that we're discussing it together, and like yes, sometimes we make mistakes, but we want to learn from them, and like also discuss it in this safe community, so that safe space as well for teachers, because it's so hard to be vulnerable when you know that the atmosphere is not friendly, like there's no safe space, right, at the school where you work. So it's so important like to support each other, I think, for me, like, because then it's easier for us to really be honest, right, and be authentic. And talking about creativity and innovations is also something that she mentioned in the talk, and in the book she talks a lot about it. Next time we'll discuss it further, because she talks about rehumanizing education and work. And I think it's
Mhm.
key, the concept of connection, communication. But right, we try a lot of new strategies. And Agata, I know that you love a lot of innovations, right? And we talk a lot about it. But like in order to embrace it, in order to be able to like implement innovation, we need to also, yeah, be open to failure,
Mhm.
which is
So
hard.
it is. Mhm.
Yeah. So because without failure, there's no, yeah, there's no
Progress.
growth. There's no growth,
Yeah.
right? So, but it is really hard, and especially when we are implementing new programs, right? There might be a lot of criticism as well from outside. And I know that now in Poland we are facing this criticism of relationship and sex ed, right? Program. So this is what's happening. And I think it's a great idea, and I know in other countries this was also happening, right? But it's how it's implemented. I think it's really important. But I think it's great that we are having this conversation. It's better
Yeah,
better to have this conversation than not to have it. And I hope that something will come out of it. But I think, yeah, failure is part of it, as long as we really talk about it, we address it, and then we try to do better, right?
for sure. Mhm.
And what else? I think the last one, so we also mentioned this today, handling criticism and burnout.
Yeah, that
Would you
also
like to
happens.
comment on it? What do you think?
Yes, yeah, to wrap it up, I think that, the burnout is something that we may experience in any profession, not just in education. And it happens when we feel we were not listened to, well, we were let down, we didn't get enough support that we deserved, we were not seen as, humans, but just the teachers that are paid, and no other support provided. We read, and we also talked about the book. It was in Polish. Yes, our discussion, Burnout, by who was
Yeah.
the author? Who was the author? I can't remember.
Marta Młyńska.
But yes, by Marta
Marta
Młyńska, and
Młyńska.
she wrote a book in Polish about the burn
Yeah,
about
burnout. Yeah,
yeah, in teachers profession. And this is something that she experienced herself, and she shared this experience. So I guess it's also something that can come to you, not in just education, but I think we educators are susceptible to that, unfortunately, because of the amount of stress that we deal with, amount of people we have to deal with on daily basis, and the
yeah,
noise, sensory overload, paperwork taken home, expectations that are imposed on us in this profession. And it's a beautiful profession, but it can also lead to burnout
yeah,
very
yeah.
easily. Yeah.
Yeah, because Młyńska, like we were saying, like she herself was a teacher. She talks about it. She also talks about other professions, but it's true that there are a lot of stories of teachers who experience it. And yeah, I think for me the most upsetting thing, like reading these stories or talking to people who experience burnout, is that aspect of loneliness, that they feel really like they are alone. They don't really have anybody to turn to. Colleagues also don't want to discuss it because it's unpleasant in a sense, right? That negativity, let's say, right? But at the same time, it's so I feel like I'm always an advocate for psychological support for teachers. So for me, this is key. And
Yeah.
I feel like doctors should have that too. Nurses should have that too. So I feel like psychological support should be there for all the people who work with other people, who really deal with all these, difficult decisions on a daily basis and deal with, different agents as well, right? Because there are great expectations when it comes to this profession. And as you talk about offset, we talk about parents. So it's not just students or school management, but there are other agents, right? Which makes it more difficult. So I feel like anybody who is from a similar profession should receive psychological support, and it should be funded by the government.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's not happening now. But we feel like every little helps. So, at charity, we're trying to support teachers as much as we can. So if you feel that you need that support, if you feel like you're looking for maybe a friend to talk to, an experienced teacher, a psychologist to talk to, you can always contact us. We are always happy to provide support. And you can also pop in and participate in our workshops. So at the moment, we do most workshops in Polish, but we are planning to do also workshops in English. So make sure that you visit our website. And we also hope that you'll be able to join us when we have our next session. We'll continue talking about Brené Brown, right? We'll continue talking about this
Yeah.
book because we still have this like a few chapters that we wanted to talk about. So it'll be great to continue our discussion. And I do have a small let me just check, a small quote or small idea maybe to just leave people with. So the courage to teach with heart is the most powerful gift you can give. And it transforms not just students, but the entire culture of learning. So I felt like this is the thought I wanted to leave people with, because it requires courage
For
right?
sure. Yeah.
But it's transformative, no? It does change the entire culture. It's like if everybody was really thinking about it, everybody was trying to be authentic, and uh, so that, empathy is at the heart of it, like, connection is at the heart of it. I feel like the entire culture of learning would be more positive. What do you think?
Yes, I totally agree on that. And especially this quote that you chose, it's perfect for that meeting.
Okay, I will stop sharing so we can just say goodbye. So
Thank you.
thank you so much. Thank you, Agata, that we could discuss it today. And yeah, and we hope to see more members of our community joining us next time. So thank you so much, everyone, and see you
Thank you.
next time.
Bye-bye. Bye.